What is going on, world? I am the Hungarian experiment, and today I want to discuss how your growth hormone levels are affected by sleep. Now, if you know me and you follow along my journey here, you know that I believe everything in our lives affects our bodies and in turn affects our hormonal production, and sleep is one of these factors that has a huge effect on your body. But I also believe it's very situational. It's a very malleable life factor. You can really manipulate your sleep around and even sacrifice it from time to time whenever you need to do it, and it's not going to have a huge negative effect long term. So depending on if you're a child, a teen, a young developing adult, or an older maintaining adult, as I like to say, the amount of sleep you need and the different styles of sleep, which we'll cover in this video, is all going to affect your body and in turn your hormone levels. So in this video I'm going to use about 10 different scientific studies as well as my personal experimentation on my own body to discuss concepts like what is sleep and why do we need it? How does sleep affect your hormone levels? Can and should you skip or sacrifice sleep, like for instance pulling an all-nighter or doing these other kinds of styles of sleeping like polyphasic sleeping? And what happens to your body if you go through complete sleep deprivation? So before we dive in and begin this video, if you're not subscribed, I'd love if you go smash that subscribe button right now. And if you find this information pertinent or you think others can benefit from it, I'd really appreciate it if you shared it around. So what is sleep and why do we even need it? We tend to think that when we go to sleep that we are resting, but our bodies are actually very active. While we are sleeping, they're doing a lot of processing, a lot of restoration, and a lot of strengthening occurs. A lot of hormones are released while we sleep, and we actually go through several different cycles throughout the night. You've probably heard of REM sleep or rapid eye movement sleep, and although this is a very important and critical phase of sleep, I believe we tend to overlook slow wave sleep, or what some people like to call deep sleep, which are the periods in between the REM cycles that are later on in the evening, which are very important for hormonal production in the body. REM sleep makes up about 25% of your sleep cycle and first occurs about 70 to 90 minutes after you fall asleep. Because your sleep cycle repeats, you enter REM sleep several times during the night. During REM sleep, your brain and your body are energized and dreaming occurs. Rapid eye movement is thought to be involved in the process of storing memories, learning, and balancing your mood, although the exact mechanisms are not well understood. Human sleep is composed of rapid eye movement sleep in stages 1, 2, 3, and 4 of non-REM sleep. The deeper stages of non-REM sleep are also known as slow wave sleep and are thought to be the most restorative. So it's not perfect like this because both cycles have an effect on both the brain and the body, but I like to think of it like REM sleep helps to restore the brain, while slow wave sleep helps to restore the body. So in this graph you can see that on the left we have brain activity during slow wave sleep, and on the right we have brain activity during rapid eye movement sleep. And as you can see, there's quite a difference. And as we move on to the next graph here, this actually compares the brain activity from being awake to slow wave sleep to REM sleep. Look how similar REM sleep is in the brainwave activity compared to being awake. A lot of processing is being done by the brain during REM sleep. So in this graph here, you get to see a depiction of our brain waves over the course of one night. And you get to see the different cycles and phases between REM sleep and non-REM sleep. The very, very low points are the rapid eye movement phases. But if you look at how different the third and fourth cycles of the non-REM sleep are from the first two, this is what results in this deep, slow wave sleep, or the most restorative phase of sleep for our bodies. So it's quite apparent that getting a good night's sleep is very important because obviously a lot of things are happening to our bodies and to our brains during this phase. But how does it exactly affect our hormone levels and how much sleep do we need? In adults, the most reproducible pulse of growth hormone secretion occurs shortly after the onset of sleep, in association with the first phase of slow wave sleep. In men, approximately 70% of the growth hormone pulses during sleep coincide with slow wave sleep, and the amount of growth hormone secreted during these pulses correlates with the concurrent amount of slow wave sleep. In bro science terms, the deeper the sleep you get, the better, bro. As discussed earlier, life is very situational, and your age has a huge factor on how much sleep you actually need. According to the National Sleep Foundation, for teenagers, 8 to 10 hours is recommended, with allowing as low as 7 or up to 11 hours being an appropriate range. And then it goes up to a young adult and adult, and the recommended is 7 to 9 hours, and an appropriate range can go as low as 6 and up to 10. But during the fourth decade of life, between ages of 30 to 40 years, the amount of growth hormone secreted over a 24-hour span decreases by 2 to 3-fold. Similarly, the amount of slow wave sleep decreases dramatically over the same narrow age range. So whether this is a coincidence or there is a connection between how much growth hormone your body drops at this age range between 30 and 40, and how that coincides with your slow wave sleep also decreasing, I believe this is a big display on how we need to be handling our life and our lifestyles and our life factors between young developing adults, where our bodies are still pumping out all this growth hormone and we need to optimize it to pump out as much as we can naturally, versus being an older maintaining adult where these levels drop significantly. And I believe we should be focusing more on life longevity and disease prevention. And this all affects how we take advantage of certain life factors like sleep. I believe reducing or even sacrificing sleep, as we're going to discuss next here, is 100% okay to do periodically. And you can quickly bounce back hormonally from this. So what happens if you skip a night of sleep? Plasma hormone levels were monitored in 10 young men during baseline waking and sleeping, during 40 hours of wakefulness, and during sleep following deprivation. The normal nocturnal growth hormone surge, as we discussed earlier, you get from the last couple stages of slow wave sleep, disappeared with sleep deprivation. So, skipping a night of sleeping in young adults completely skips over your natural growth hormone secretions that occur at night. But the normal nocturnal growth hormone surge disappeared with sleep deprivation and was intensified following sleep deprivation. During sleep after deprivation, growth hormone secretion was prolonged, and second growth hormone peaks occurred in 3 subjects which were not associated with slow wave sleep. This means that if you do skip a night of sleeping, you will have a greater growth hormone surge on the night you go to recover from that missed day than you would on your just consistent regular sleep cycles. But it's not enough of an intensification. It's not great enough to replace that day that you skipped. So I've discussed this in other videos, but I believe you build yourself up to a base hormonal level. And you can fluctuate and dip up and down, and the more you optimize your life factors or the more you negatively affect your life factors over long periods of time, this will either raise or lower that baseline. So even though you may be able to recover from a night of no sleep quite easily, and you're actually going to see an increase in your growth hormone surge and secretion during that recovery night, I don't believe doing this long term, skipping night after night after night and recovering in between that, is going to be good long term for the body, because technically you're skipping out on a whole day's worth of this growth hormone secretion in the body. I look at it kind of similarly to fasting and intermittent fasting. If you fast for 20 to 24 hours, you're going to have a 1,500 to 2,000% increase in your growth hormone levels in men. But you have to balance that with food. You can't just expect to eat one meal or 500 calories and then do another fast and get a great hormone surge, and then eat another 500 calories and get another great growth hormone surge. Over time, because you're not optimizing the other factors of your life, your base hormone level is going to decrease. The amount of growth hormone your body is going to secrete and these other factors in your life aren't going to be as great, because you are negatively hindering one of your life factors in a great way. So sleep is highly malleable. You can really manipulate it around. You can even skip some nights. But what if I sacrifice 2 to 3 hours of sleep every single day? Will that negatively affect my growth hormone levels? Although there are no scientific studies displaying this, or maybe I just couldn't find it, I did dive pretty deep, I believe this is pretty obvious from what we looked at earlier, where if you skip that 4th cycle of slow wave sleep and you're getting 70% of your growth hormone levels in those last 2 cycles, and you completely skip this one, I can only imagine that you're skipping out on about 35% of your growth hormone secretion in your body every single night. And again, over time, skipping out on the sleep every single day, skipping out on that 35% of extra growth hormone every single day is going to reduce and lower your total baseline hormonal levels. So what is better for productivity? Should I skip a whole night of sleep, or should I be sacrificing sleep every single day? This is a very tough question to answer, and I believe it is very situational. Depending on your current base hormonal output, as well as your age, your goals in life, your limitations, all these things are going to add up and decide what's the best path for you to take. And this is why I believe you should learn this for yourself. So I can't give you a quick answer here, but for myself, looking at these results, looking at these studies, I would say, if you're desperate and you need to get some work done, skip out on a whole night of sleep, binge work, and then catch up on sleep the next day. It's better than sacrificing 35% of your growth hormone level that you could be outputting every single day. And again, this all depends on your goals. I'm trying to build muscle. I'm trying to optimize every factor of my life to get the highest hormonal output possible, which I believe other people should be focusing on as well, because it's going to lead to a host of amazing factors and effects on the human body. But if your goals aren't to, be hitting the gym every single day and getting in there, then yeah, you could probably sacrifice out on sleep. And we're going to talk about something very interesting right now. So what about different sleeping patterns? Can you sacrifice the amount of hours that you sleep and still manage to get a great cognitive recovery and great hormonal and body recovery? For 3 months at the beginning of 2018, I experimented around with polyphasic sleeping, which is a very unique sleep practice where you manipulate your sleep schedule into different intervals during the day or during the night to maximize productivity. So for example, I had a longer sleep. I would sleep for about 3 to 4 hours, and then I would offset that with 2 20 to 40 minute naps. Now there are other ways you can structure polyphasic sleeping. You can have just a whole 6 to 7 naps at 20 to 40 minutes throughout the day. You can do biphasic sleeping where you have 2 longer sleeps that are about 3 to 4 hours each, and that helps to recover you. But is it optimal for hormonal production, and what did I notice on my body during this 3-month experiment? For more information on how I handled this experiment, I have a whole playlist of videos dedicated to it, but I found it took me about 2 weeks to adapt to this unique sleeping cycle and these unique sleeping patterns. During this adaptation phase, I had mood swings, I was quite irritable, and I even had bloodshot eyes, but once I got past those 2 weeks, my productivity shot through the roof. I felt like I just had so much time on my hands. As I lightly mentioned earlier, I was typically having a 4-hour sleep after work, and then I would offset that with 2 20 to 40 minute naps, and that seemed to suffice. It was enough sleep to recharge me cognitively and still let me go to the gym and crush it and hit things hard. It was very interesting though, because I felt like a zombie in a way. Because I was having these shorter sleeps and I was forcing myself to awake, and then I was forcing myself to have these short naps and reawake again, time didn't seem to affect me anymore. I felt like life was just a blur because everything started to kind of mush together, because I could just pause whatever I was doing or focusing on. If I was editing up a video and I felt a little tired or drawn down, I was like, hey, perfect time for a little 20 to 40 minute nap. I would just, lay down, have my alarm set, boom, pop right back up, and then get right back to work. There wasn't this huge delay. There wasn't this lull in between the sleep. I could just hop right back into being productive. But again, life turned into like a blur for me. So although I was super productive during this time blur and zombie mode that I was going through with polyphasic sleeping, I was lacking in other phases of my life. I was getting a ton of work done, I was crushing it at the gym, but because time just kind of mushed together, I realized holy crap, I haven't checked my emails in 3 days just because I don't even know what's night and day anymore. I'm just kind of I'm alive, I'm awake. I didn't have these different phases. I didn't notice when one day went into the next. It all just blurred into one. And on top of that too, when I go to look back, because I actually did a 51-day video every single day experiment, I look back at some of those videos that I made and I don't really have much of a recollection of actually making them. I see the video, I see the finished product, and it's good, but I can't remember like sitting down, creating it, actually editing it up. It's like, that part is gone for me for some reason. And to be honest, I don't like feeling that way. So the whole concept behind polyphasic sleeping, or at least the way I understand it, is that because you're sleep deprived and your body is like waiting for it and it's ready for it, when you go to have these short naps, the second you put your head down on the pillow, you almost immediately enter into REM sleep because your body needs it. Your body's like begging for it. So that quick 20 to 40 minute nap, being all in REM sleep, helps to recharge you cognitively. Now this sounds great, and maybe it's great for recharging the brain, but as we learned earlier, those periods in between the REM sleep or the slow wave sleep is the most important for recharging our bodies. It gets 70% of our growth hormone dumped into our bodies during this phase. And I don't believe with polyphasic sleeping or with sleeping in cycles like this that you are taking advantage of that. I just don't believe that you are hormonally recharging yourself when you're skipping out on this important slow wave sleep. During this 3-month experiment, I created a video called Polyphasic Sleeping for Teenagers, Is It Safe? Because of the onslaught of questions I was getting from young people in regards to manipulating your sleep cycles. And in that video, I said I believe it is okay to experiment and to try it out. I mean, it is just sleep. But none of the questions asked is if I would recommend it for teenagers or if it's optimal for teenagers. So, would I recommend it for teenagers and young adults? Do I think it's optimal for young teenagers and adults to do polyphasic sleeping? No, I don't believe it is. During these periods of our lives, up until our 30s to 40s, we need to be taking advantage of as much growth hormone secretion in our body as we can. Because this is going to help us later on in life with our health and our life longevity. If we want to live longer, we need to be optimizing this thing as much as possible until we're 35 to 40 years of age. The most I would recommend it to are people whose bodies are done developing. Because as we saw earlier, once you do reach that 30 to 40 years of age, natural growth hormone secretions decrease 2 to 3-fold. And your slow wave sleep also decreases 2 to 3-fold. This is when you can, and when I believe you should, be maximizing and taking advantage of the fact that you can sacrifice out on your sleep. You can get more work done. You can manipulate your sleeping schedule to optimize your lifestyle, optimize your productivity, chase your goals and your dreams out there in the world. So as you get older, I don't believe it's as detrimental to your body. It's not going to be as detrimental to your life to experiment around with polyphasic sleeping and to really push it to the test. And when I look back at polyphasic sleeping and I did a bunch of research, there are actually a lot of amazing, great minds from the past who used to experiment around with polyphasic sleeping. Salvador Dali, Thomas Edison, Einstein, they all experimented and used and took advantage of polyphasic sleeping. Now, when I first saw this, I was like, hell yeah, I'm going to take advantage of this too. But as I did more research and I've come back to polyphasic sleeping and I did all the research for this video, I realized that when they started and they were fully taking advantage of polyphasic sleeping, it wasn't until later on in their lives. It wasn't until they were in their 40s, 50s, and 60s that they really started to manipulate their sleep schedule so they could just be as productive as possible. And this is probably why we're still talking about them centuries later, because they took advantage of all that extra time they had. They put it towards their dreams and their aspirations and their goals in life. What about hallucinations? I heard that if you withhold from sleep, you can reach these euphoric states and even hallucinate. A lot of people say that they learn a lot about themselves by pushing their bodies to its limits. So although I agree, and if you guys know me, I regularly push these different life factors, I push my body, I push my eating habits to the test to learn more about myself, I don't believe pushing our factors to its limits is what is optimal. You can learn a lot about yourself, your limits, what you care about, what's worth living for, what's worth dying for by pushing aspects like sleep deprivation to the test. And you can also experience these wild, intense, hallucinogenic and euphoric states where it feels like the mind and the body take over and almost teach you something about yourself. But the greatest learning aspects that I've experienced and I've learned from researching others is the recovery time after, when you go to look back on your outlook about that experience. You learn the most from these experiences days, weeks, and even months after them. But I believe if you want to experience that the best, then you need to be in an optimal state when you are not pushing it to its limits. Alright, well there you have it, world. That is how sleep affects your growth hormone levels. Any type of information, scientific sources, or links and graphs that I provided in this video will all be in the description box below, so make sure you guys go check that out. If you enjoyed this video, maybe you learned something here today, I'd love if you shared this with your friends on Facebook. Help to spread my crazy Hungarian face around just a little bit and show people why and how I'm just so passionate about learning about hormones and how it affects the human body. Also, I'd love if you go smash that like button and leave me a comment. I am the Hungarian Experiment.